Hi, I'm Mike from Craft Supplies USA, and today I'm going to show you how to get a mirror polish on acrylics using the Magic Juice polishing system. It's a really cool polishing kit. It comes with 6 different steps, and it allows you to get a super high gloss mirror finish on almost any acrylic, CA finish, or other synthetic materials. We'll go through how to use it, some tips and tricks I've learned along the way with doing this on a ton of different pens, and we'll get the lathe bed cleaned off, and we'll get started. So whenever we're talking about polishing acrylics, the preparation steps are essential to get a mirror finish. What I've done with this blank is I've turned it and I've sanded it up through 400 grit. With the Magic Juice in particular, they recommend a minimum of 800 grit, preferably 1500 or 2000. So now that we're at 400, I'll go through the steps on sanding from 600 to 2500, and then we'll use our polish. Because I've sanded to 400, I'll start with the 600 now. And get my safety glasses on here, and we want to make sure our lathe speed is appropriate for sanding. We don't want to be turning too fast where the sandpaper doesn't cut efficiently, or it'll damage the blank if it gets too hot. So on a pen I'm right about 1000 RPM, a little less, but we can start sanding now. I like to hold the paper with the ends, pull those tight, and that'll help prevent any ridges from my fingers pushing the paper with uneven pressure across the surface. So pull that paper nice and tight, and that'll disperse the tension across the paper more evenly. Once the sandpaper starts loading up, then I kind of just adjust it to a clean side, and then once that gets loaded up, then I'll just flick it out and clear out my sandpaper. This Abernet you can use wet, so if you want to sand with water, go ahead. And now that we've sanded that really well with the 600, I'll show you a little trick here. I like to use a crosshatch method, so I'll sand diagonally across both directions. So I'm going to go right to left, kind of across the blank this way, and then I'll go left to right, back over it, and it creates a nice X pattern across the blank and helps get rid of those scratches from when the lathe was turning. This will also help smooth out any ridges you have left over from the tool on your coarser grits. So if you didn't get a very good tool surface off a skew or something like that, doing this type of sanding method will help get rid of those ridges as well. But anytime you're trying to get a super high gloss, the surface prep is extremely important, so you don't want to skip any steps or try and shortcut it. Okay, we've done our crosshatch pattern with the 600. I'll set that aside, and now we'll go to our non-woven 1500 grit. If you don't have this stuff, you could also use these Merlon pads. These go from, I believe, 800 to 2000, and these can be wet sanded as well. Same thing with the paper. I'll do with the Merlon. I'll pull that tight across to help spread out the load. And then we'll just work that back and forth and refine the surface we have. Refining the surface just increases the optical clarity of the acrylic, which allows the diamonds in this diamond cast blank to really show, get a lot more depth and color the better your surface is finished. Alright, we'll stop the lathe and we'll do our crosshatch pattern with the Merlon as well. And it's cool too, because every grit that you go up, you can see the surface just getting better and better as you go, and the colors start popping more, getting a lot brighter. And then especially once we go to the polish, you'll see this thing really shine and show off that diamond cast blank really well. So again, just do that crosshatch pattern. That's the most effective way that I've found to get rid of scratch marks and give yourself a better, more even surface as well. Alright, now that we've sanded that with the 1500, I'm just going to wipe this off and inspect the surface and see if there's any coarser scratches from that 600 or the 400 grit left behind. Because now that we're at the 1500 grit, if we go to our 2500, it's not going to remove those coarser scratches, and you may need to drop back down a couple grits. So take a look at your surface, make sure there's nothing left behind from those coarser papers we used. But that surface looks pretty good. So now we can move on to our 2500 grit. Again, you can use the Merlon 3-inch pads. Those work really well. And we'll just sand this with that 2500 and get this ready for our polish. Alright, we'll do our same crosshatch pattern with the 2500. Alright, I think that surface has been sanded well enough with the 2500. Let's wipe the dust off and you can see that our surface is already looking pretty good with no polish. So I think our surface is prepped and ready for the polishing system. So I'll set this stuff aside. The polish comes in a 6-step process, and then they also have this cool little caddy available to hold all the bottles. I've added a few rare earth magnets in the bottom of it so I can set it on my lathe and not have it get bumped off too easily. So that's something to consider. But with these bottles, our polishing speed is going to be what our turning speed was, so right around 3,000 RPM. And then we'll just be using paper towel to apply. And it doesn't take a lot of polish with this for it to cut effectively and refine that surface. So this size of bottle you could probably do 200 to 300 pens with no problem. But you can do this on CA, synthetic materials like the alternative ivory, acrylics, all those different variants of acrylics. You can use this stuff on, so it works really well. But let's turn our lathe on. I'll start with the number 1 step, obviously. And then you put just a small pea-sized amount on the rag. It doesn't take a lot of polish for this stuff to work effectively. So I put way too much on the rag, but that's going to be okay. Now we can bump our speed up. And then we want to apply a fair amount of friction to this to make it cut efficiently. You want it to where you can generate some heat but not be so hot you burn your finger. So just play around with different pressures, see what works for you. And then we'll just work that back and forth. And you can see the polish is turning black there. That's from the steel on the bushings. So it'll polish your bushings up really nice. You can use this stuff to polish brass if you're doing like a bullet pen or something like that as well. And then we'll just work that polish across. Once you feel like you've got enough coverage and you've polished it well with the step, just get a clean section of paper towel and then buff away any excess polish, and then we'll move on to our next step. Alright, we'll go on to the number 2 bottle. One thing that's worth noting is make sure you close these nozzles after you're done using it, because it can dry in the nozzle and kind of clog it up a little bit. But just a pea-sized amount on the rag. I'll spread out the polish across the blank, and then we can start polishing that surface. And you can see even after just the 2nd step, that's a really good finish we have on there. But you'll be excited to see what this looks like when we're done. Alright, well now we'll just get a clean section of rag and then just buff off any excess polish. That way we're not contaminating the surface with a coarser grit. Now we're on step 3. Just spread the polish out evenly across the surface, and then you can start buffing that in. As far as using this stuff, this would be my preferred polish really on something that I need an absolute mirror finish on. Something like a CA finish on a ring where I don't want to have any imperfections, or something on this like a higher end acrylic, like a diamond cast or the Hobble Creek blanks. It's definitely going to be my go-to finish for that. And now we can move on to step 4. Spread that out evenly across the blank. That way you don't waste a bunch of it that stays on the rag itself. And then we'll just buff that in. Fair amount of heat and friction, but not too hot. And then a clean section, and then we can move on to our next grit. The nice thing about this polish as well is it's just super fast, easy to use. You know, if I wasn't doing this in a demo talking to you guys while I'm doing it, you can just burn through these 6 steps super fast and have a really good surface behind. Alright, we're on to our final grit now. The number 6 step is really thin, so be careful when you're squeezing it out. It's easy to put way too much on the rag. Again, just a pea-sized amount, and spread that across the blank, and then you can start working that in. And then we'll get a clean section of rag, and then just buff that away, get rid of any surface oils or anything left behind, any polish. And then this blank's going to be done, and we can stop the lathe and show you guys how good of a finish we have. Extremely high gloss. It allows the diamonds in that diamond cast blank to really sparkle and pop, and the colors are ultra vivid. Let's take this off the lathe, try and not get any fingerprints on the blank. And I can show this off to you guys and see just how high a gloss we got and the depth and color we get out of that blank. Alright, so now that we're done polishing, I just wanted to show you guys just how easy this stuff is to use and how good of a finish you can get. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I answer those directly. And as always, subscribe to our channel for more wood turning videos.